Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a Kickstarter preview. This one is for Tiny Epic Tactics. It is from Gamelyn Games and Scott Alms, a 1 to 4 player game. And it is a very cool package.
Yeah, it definitely is tiny and epic, and it all fits inside its box just like you would expect it to from them. And it creates this wonderful 3D terrain that you see here in front of you.
It can be played as a pure solo adventure. It can be played as a 2-player cooperative game. The way it's probably most going to be played is a 2 to 4 player competitive mode, and then you also have 2 versus 2 team play. This is all elevated terrain, and then you have the cloth map on the bottom. Now, with anything that we do for Kickstarter, this is a prototype. A lot of the things that you're seeing here are in fact stretch goals within the game.
Yeah, and I'll cover a couple of those really quickly. All of the little tokens you see on the cards are all going to start off as cubes. The meeples are all going to start off plain. A screen printing is an unlock, and the cloth mat will be paper to start.
This game is all about area control and then using the characters that you have to control those specific areas to trigger the end game. Each player at the table is going to come with one of the 4 different archetypes. You have the fighter, the rogue, the wizard, and the beast. And all of these characters have their own set of hit points, their own set of ammo or magic that they're going to be used to sling things back and forth. And they all have their own inherent special ability, which really makes the game tactical.
Absolutely. As we talk about that, they're all going to start off with a movement, a melee attack, and then you're going to have a couple of characters that are going to have a range. You're going to have a mage that's going to have a magic attack, which has a range to it. And then you'll have your straight up beast that's just has a lot of health, but is all about the melee attack.
You're going to set up the board just as you see here. We have a 4-player game set up. The cards are the different types of character classes that you can pick, can either be drafted at the start, or you can simply just hand them out randomly. Each of the players is going to start in one of the 4 corners of the map. The idea within the game is you're trying to get your characters to the control points. The control points are going to contain 6 flags of one particular color. So we have 6 red flags, 6 blue flags, and printed here on the map you have 6 yellow flags. You're trying to get area control in those areas. And to do so, you're going to be moving your characters in there and triggering them. Now, when you look at these flag areas, you're going to notice that each one of them has 6 flags, but one of them has a trigger point on it specifically.
Yeah, and that space is where you want to be in order to get this control token to move for the very first time. At the beginning of your turn, if you are in that space and you have control over the 6 spaces, and then also be the person with the most in that area in order to move the token forward 1 space. Once that happens, you no longer have to be in the control area. You just have to maintain control of the overall space. And at the beginning of your next turn, or whoever has control, that flag will continue to move. When it gets to the end, you will then, whoever triggered it at the end, will then take it, and that'll go towards in-game scoring, which we'll talk about shortly.
That flag is only going to move if a player controls that area, and if it's at the start of their turn. So there's going to be positioning in here where players have a whole round to be able to move you or knock you away from those particular areas. And the other tricky thing is you activating that flag doesn't get you anything, right? It just means you trigger that flag moving. You have to have control of it by the time that that moves to the 3rd spot on this area. If you control it when that happens, then you gain it. So you do have time to react to other players when they're moving around and trying to control those areas. So what are you doing on your turn? Well, at the start of the game, like we said, everyone's going to get 4 characters. They're going to place all their tokens on there according to their magic, their ammo, and their health. Plus, every player is going to get 2 of these tactic cards and pick one of them. These tactic cards can be used if they do something very specific on their turn. So each of the characters is going to have their own movement value where they're going to be moving around trying to get into those specific positions.
Moving around the board, how do you do that? You move in orthogonal directions only, no diagonal. If you're going to move, most spaces aren't going to cost you anything but 1 movement point. However, there are some special rules depending on the type of terrain. If you're moving up onto one of these elevated surfaces, it's going to cost you an additional movement action. The same goes for water. If you are moving up onto a peak, which is really great, it's going to cost you an additional movement in addition to moving up, and it's going to allow you the ability to attack the entire board.
Yeah, there's a lot of different areas on this board that you need to be aware of. You have villages. Anytime you move through a village, and you don't have to stop there, but the moment you move through a village, you're allowed to heal 4 health onto that character that moves through, and then you're allowed to refill either your ammo or your magic for that particular character. You have a lot of portals where you can move from one location all the way to the other side of the board. You also have a ballista here that allows you to fire in different directions and push people back from locations, which is really nice. Also, any of the villages that you see, if you control those at the end of the game, they give you victory points, so there's dual purposes on why you want to move to those particular areas. And attacking is going to take place in one of two different ways. You have melee attacks, which are done orthogonal to any of the other characters, or you have ranged attacks. Now, each of the characters are going to have either one or both of those different things. And all of these are going to proc different things depending upon the stats built onto the card. The great thing about this game is that you're always going to be doing damage. Yes, you see dice within the game, but the dice don't dictate the amount of damage. All the characters are going to have built-in damage that you're going to do no matter what, and that's fantastic. The dice that you see below these areas are the dice you're going to roll when you do that attack, and those are going to do special things. Typically, they're going to knock back other characters if you have melee attack. The range attacks allow you to always hit, but they can also waste some additional ammunition from using those type of attacks.
Right, and then the other option is the magic, the mage character, the wizard, and they have the ability to either attack with their spells or possibly do something like heal. It's really going to be dependent on that individual character. They do have a range to it as well, which is going to be listed similar to what you saw on the ranged attacks, and then they will be able to spend additional mana to roll dice to power up that spell even more.
All right, so on your turn, you're allowed to do 3 actions. The trick is you want to spread those actions across multiple different characters. The actions are typically moving or attacking. When you're done doing both of those things or either one of those things across your board, you always draw 1 new tactics card in your hand up to a limit of 2. Remember, you can use those tactic cards anytime in your turn as long as the conditions on the top of the card apply, and then you can apply the bottom part of the card itself. And we're going to keep taking actions turn after turn until one of these moves all the way to the 3rd area. Now, that's going to trigger the end of the game depending upon the number of players. If the first flag moves and it's only a 2-player game, that's going to trigger the end of the game. However, if it is a 3-player game, 2 of those flags have to reach the last area. And if it's at a 4-player game, all those flags have to move to the last area. At the end of the game, each player is going to get points depending upon any of the characters that they have alive, any of the other players' characters that they've captured. You get 5 points for any of those flags that you've collected, and you also get 1 additional victory point for any of those villages. So the game itself really boils down to tactics. This game is all about being in the right position at the right time. More than anything, this is a really true spatial game, and you don't realize that the first time you play. You just want to go in there and start swinging your clubs around, but that's not really how the game is played. You want to be able to position your guys in the right area, you want to be able to block people, and then you really have to read your cards because these cards play hugely into your ability to be successful in this game.
He's not wrong. You have to pay attention to the abilities on your cards. Some of your abilities are going to help your other heroes. They may be dependent on the type of action that you're doing. That'll tell you along the way. Some of them will just be dependent on the timing of things. Additionally, there are different things you can do on the board in order to position yourself well. So you can block the different portals and keep people from being able to move over through them and mess with what you're doing. You can move people back out of the way with the knockbacks. The biggest thing you have to be worried about, though, when you're attacking is, can I actually absorb a counterattack? Because when you hit somebody, they can hit you back right away.
You don't want to get into a situation when you're sitting on 1 or 2 hit points and you haven't gone back into a village. Although you want to stay in those areas and control them, you also have to go back to villages or you have no chance of winning. Because once you start to dwindle down your characters, your options obviously start to dwindle as well. So this is Tiny Epic Tactics, a 1 to 4 player game. I invite you guys to go to the Kickstarter to see all the final components. If you guys have any questions, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and now also follow us on Instagram, and we will catch you guys next time.